We'll just resume the meeting now. Thank you, everyone. And I just want to quickly say that I'm really humbled to be appointed as chair. I really enjoyed my term as deputy last term. And what I want to make clear to everyone is that everyone is part of this committee and that everyone's input and contributions is really valued. And I'll make sure that we have the space and the time to incorporate everyone's feelings and feedback. So thank you very much for your support. And so now I'll open the nominations for Deputy Chair.
Move
Councillor
Deputy
Maguire.
John Grant.
We have a nomination for Councillor Grant as Deputy.
Happy to second.
Councillor Lee as seconder. Councillor Grant, do you accept the nomination? Thank you. Are there any other nominations? There being none, I declare Councillor Grant as the Deputy Chair of the Joint Committee. Congratulations. So, now we're moving on to the minutes for the meeting of the Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Joint Committee meeting on the 22nd of September 2025 to be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder noting that it needs to be someone who is present at those meetings? Councillor Grant?
Happy to move.
Happy to second through the chair.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Motion carried unanimously.
Sorry, just before we proceed, I'll get everyone comfy with using their mics. It's right, if you'll just push the right button. Red means go, it's the opposite. That means you're talking, and if you can talk right into the mic, because there are those attending online, and they need to be able to hear you. Otherwise, if you move away, they can't hear you online. And do we want to go around and do introduction?
Yes, I think that would be helpful. If everyone can go around and introduce themselves and their positions and whether that's their first term or not. Great. We'll start with you, Susan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Law. I'm the chair of the coordinating executive group that reports obviously to this committee. In my other life, I am the chief executive of the South Waikato District Council.
Thank you, Susan.
Kia ora, everybody. Ko Julian Snowball, toko ingoa. I'm Julian Snowball. I am the group manager, group controller for the Group Emergency Management Office.
Good morning, everybody. John Grant. I am Deputy Mayor, Thames Coromandel District Council.
Morena no tātou. My name's Eri Manawaiti and I'm the Deputy Mayor, Waitomo District Council.
Good morning. I'm Les Bennett, alternative member, Waipa Council. I'm Gary Maguire. I'm councillor here of Waikato Regional Council and chair of the Civil Defence for Regional Council.
Morena, Axel Beck, Mayor of Waikato District Council, and here for the first time in this forum, but 2 terms prior as councillor. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. My name's Steve Mananui. I'm a new councillor to the Taupo District Council. Yeah, happy to be here.
Morena, I'm Anne-Marie Spicer. I'm a 4th-term councillor from Hauraki District Council.
Andrew McGivern, I'm a first-time councillor from Matamata Piako and I'm the alternative to my esteemed mayor next to me.
Good morning, everybody. Mayor Ash Tanner. I'm the new old mayor, starting my 13th year in local government, and good to be back. Good to see some familiar faces around the table, and yeah, looking forward to sitting on this committee. Thank you.
Morning, Waikato. Thomas Lee from South Waikato District Council, and this is my 5th term.
Tēnā koutou, Tanil Kiti from I'm the Otarahanga councillor. Also work for Hatohone St John's Ambulance Officer part-time and chairman of the First Response Community Group Taharoa Te Waitere Tianga.
Okay. We want to do staff as well, if you're able to.
Good morning, I'm Aaron Tregarth. I'm Team Leader Operational Readiness and an alternate Group Controller at the Waikato Group Emergency Management Office.
Morena Irving Young, Team Lead Community Resilience and Recovery, and also looking after recovery for the Waikato. Yep.
Morena, Jill Regler, I'm the Business Enablement Specialist over at GMO.
Kia ora, I'm Vicky Cowley. I'm the Strategic Planning Advisor based over at the Group Emergency Management Office. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Brent Sinclair. I'm one of the directors here at Waikato Regional Council. I'm also on KEG with Susan.
Kia ora everyone, Jennifer Nicol. I am Waikato Regional Councillor 3rd term and alternate to Gary over there.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Bell. I'm the General Manager Strategy Environment at Waitomo District Council, and I'm also the local controller and on KEG.
Kia ora team, Brian Carter from Tim's Coromandel District Council, here as representative of KEG and also a local controller.
Kia ora koutou, Mark Tinworth. I'm the Community Risk Manager for Waikato for Foreign Emergency.
I pass the parcel. Ngā mihi kia koutou. David Spears, CEO at Hauraki District Council.
Morena, ko Ali Tokuingwa. I'm Ali Van Kuyk from Matamatapihaku District Council, KEG Rep and Recovery Manager.
Morena, I'm Kelvin Pearl. I'm the Director of Safety and Resilience at Hamilton City Council. I'm a controller and also a KEG member.
Good time. Kia ora, Tony Quipfall from Otahuanga District Council.
Thank you, everyone. I should probably introduce myself as well. I'm Emma Pike, and I'm a 2nd term councillor at Hamilton City Council. It's wonderful to see some familiar and new faces here, and the breadth of experience and talent that you guys all bring. So thank you all for coming. Mayor Ash? Oh, online, sorry. Apologies. Oh, excellent. Sorry. Aroha mai.
Atamarie, Koshona Heller and Tokuingwa. I'm a Senior Regional Advisor with the National Emergency Management Agency, here standing in for my colleague Matthew Bramhall. Thanks for having me.
We have Councillor Patterson. Deputy Mayor Patterson, are you online? He's on mute. Can't get audio on that. I think that's a lot of us. Thank you, everyone. So we'll move to general items now. Right, my computer's just died. Okay. So this is Vicky's report on the Joint Committee overview. Vicky, if you can please come to the mic. Thank you, Vicky. I think we'll see a lot of you today.
Thank you. I've brought my water bottle for a lot of speaking. I apologise in advance, but it's a little bit fuller than normal being the inaugural meeting. So for this item, a joint committee overview, I'll take the report as read. This is a for information report. It just provides a high-level overview of the Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group. The group's established under the Civil Defence Emergency Management Act. Governance sits with this joint committee representing the 11 Waikato local authorities, making it the largest membership CDEM, in New Zealand. Largest group in New Zealand by numbers. Okay, key parts of the Act where it advises the group's statutory functions. So I'll just go through these bullet points because they are very important. So it's identifying, assess and manage hazards and risk, consult and communicate about our risk, implement cost-effective risk reduction, maintain trained personnel and provide services and resources, respond to and manage the adverse effects of emergencies in its area, plan and carry out recovery activities, and when requested, assist other groups in the implementation of civil defence emergency management. And also to develop, approve and implement and monitor a civil defence emergency management group plan and regularly review the plan, which includes setting a budget to achieve that, what's outlined in the plans. So that brings me to the group's recently adopted strategic group plan, which I've put a printed copy on the desk for everyone. And so this provides the framework for the next 5 years in achieving the group's vision of a disaster resilient Waikato. Underpinning the vision are 3 goals that are purposefully aligned to the National Disaster Resilience Strategy, so that we've got alignment from that regional to that national, all pulling in the same direction. There are 9 objectives designed to achieve the group's desired outcomes. And additionally, what we've done different from previous group plans, there is a linked group plan actions document, which is the year by year, and it specifies the priority steps the group has agreed to take each year towards achieving its desired outcomes. And that will be reviewed each year rather than being captured in a 5-year document. Okay, joint committee governance is supported by key entities such as the National Emergency Management Agency, who provide a national perspective, the Coordinating Executive Group, which you'll hear us refer to as KEG, which is made up of the local authorities, chief executives or their executive level delegate, senior representatives from Police, Fire and Emergency New Zealand and Health. We also have the chairs of the Lifeline Utilities Group and the Welfare Coordination Group, with iwi member representation coming on board in March 26. Additionally, they're supported by the statutory role holders of the Group Controller, the Group Recovery Manager and the Group Welfare Manager. The Joint Committee members' local knowledge, relationship and influence are critical to the group success to strengthen governance capability and to provide an in-depth understanding of emergency management. There is an induction day scheduled for May 2026. This is agreed to by the previous joint committee and the KEG members, recognising that there was so much inductions happening in this initial stage with newly elected members. But I just wish to note that there is a report later in the agenda, and that will address what joint committee members need to know if an emergency event occurs before that induction day. So you'll get the what you really need to know, this brief overview, and that's it. So the staff recommendation is that the report be received. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. I'll open the floor for questions. Any questions on the report? Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Chair. It's a good thing to kick off with, Vicky. So thank you for presenting the summary of this. What I'd like to have an understanding, normally the word governance infers that there is an oversight and responsibility for actions. I'm just wondering if, for the benefit of everybody here, we can have absolute clarity as to what the responsibilities of this group is as it sits within the civil defence structures that exist within the region. Is it possible just to have a bit of an understanding of the level of governance that we are actually responsible for overseeing?
Through the chair, very good question. and I would probably point towards some reviews of how Auckland performed in the Auckland anniversary events of 2023. And one of the recommendations, or one of the points of focus of the joint committee in Auckland that came under scrutiny, was the level of oversight that was given or potentially not given to the delivery of the group plan. So these documents, this is a strategic document in relation to the strategic direction of the Civil Defence Group as a collective. When I talk about the group, I'm talking about the collective. And a lot of work goes into this document. And what ordinarily happens is it sometimes gets forgotten or gets overrun with new things, new bits of working, or other priorities that potentially should have triggered a review of this document. So my answer to your question is, your level of governance is, I would focus on the delivery of this document, how we are achieving that, and how you are holding the collective as a group of councillors to account in relation to delivery of this document. And we make that a little bit easier, he says, with this document, because there is a delivery action plan that sits below that. Now, there will be some blurring because there are some operational matters in that action plan, the delivery vehicle, but you've got to be comfortable that the level of detail provided to you as governors gives you enough information that you're satisfied this document's been delivered. So that's what I would focus on as governance, is the delivery of this document.
Supplementary question. There are changes in the new legislation that is proposed that make it very clear that the responsibility lies with the chief executive of the territorial authorities for the delivery of the operational aspects of the local response. So I just wonder if, in that regard, the clarity in regard to the territorial authority responsibility and then the regional responsibility through this group could just be clarified.
Again, through the chair. So this is the structure of emergency management is and we'll go into this in more detail on the induction day, but I understand it's very relevant now. The structure of emergency management is every member of the Civil Defence Group must come, or every member of this region must come together and join a Civil Defence Emergency Management Group. You are the collective of that region. You're the group. But the legislation, I'll start off by saying, I think we need to separate off, my advice to you would be that we separate off what the government's proposing in the NEMA bill versus what is legislatively required today. And I go back to that, we can get distracted and forget about this. Legally, this is what we've got to deliver today. The legislation may or may not change. I understand. There's an item later on in the agenda that talks about the emergency management bill, and there are some fishhooks, I would say, just from a very quick glance, that we might want to make submissions on that potentially blur the lines of national and local delivery. And the chief executive at a local level might be one of those. So I think we park the new legislation and submit against it and concentrate on the current legislation. The current legislation has a committee of, in this case, 11 members representing the 11 councils in this region. But the legal responsibility under the Act for delivery of the delivery of emergency management sits with the individual councils. And again, I will use a recent, although it is live, so I've got to be very mindful of how I say it. There is a coroner's inquest that is live at the moment. And we tragically lost a gentleman in North Waikato. And therefore, our Civil Defence Group was the subject of being asked to go and provide some evidence to the coroner. It wasn't just me that was called, as the group manager, was not just called to give evidence. Also, the regional council were called to give evidence in terms of their component part, and Waikato District Council was called to give evidence in terms of their responsibility for delivery of emergency management at a local level. So This is the collective. So trying to round it off, this is the collective strategic goals and direction. The actual responsibility for delivering that is in legislation is for each one of your organizations. You don't, there's no, the collective responsibility is for the oversight. How well are you making sure it happens? So we will be held to account for that. But the actual rubber hitting the road and who is responsible is your individual organizations. And there could be a disconnect. You could see a situation where there's a disconnect. Worst case scenario is you're overseeing this group plan and the delivery of it. A member or a couple of members are not on track or are behind, constantly behind in terms of delivering a certain part of that. And that part becomes the focus of an inquiry down the line. Does that answer?
I think it provides a really good setting for further discussion that needs to be held. And the reason that I'm raising that is I just wanted to make sure that we have some clarity, particularly for the responsibility of the people here and where they need to go to really understand how that responsibility in this group sits. So thanks. It's helpful for me.
Thank you. Excellent question, Deputy Mayor Grant, and fulsome response. Thank you, Julian. Councillor Manawiti.
Okay, Yvonne. Vicky, you mentioned in 2026 there'll be iwi representation. What's the current model of representation for iwi or Māori for this particular group? I'm new, so I don't know what that looks like.
Your Honour, Deputy Mayor. So at the moment, there are no mandated. The legislation says that the members of this committee are the mayors or the designates or delegates from those councils. There has been a number of reviews, technical reviews led at central government level that have looked at iwi representation within the civil defence structures, whether that is at this level, at the governance level, or at an executive level. Where the current legislation or proposed legislation to Parliament has landed is that representation will be at the executive level as a mandated, as a minimum legislation. We're already there as a group. It's been a journey for us, some journey over a number of years to land on how do we get representation and the appropriate levels or the right levels of governance and executive at a regional level. We've landed at the executive. That's already ahead, if you want, of where the legislation's posing the same thing if it goes through unaffected. However, I will say that the same proposal was put forward in a previous bill, and there were some challenges and some changes because of. So it was previously decided that it would only be at an executive level. That would be the appropriate place. But there were some challenges. I think at the time the minister was Kiri Tapualan, who advocated for membership on the governance group as well. So there were some changes in the previous bill. But at the moment, that's not in the new legislation. But we'll see. It's got to go through select committee. What we have taken a step further, what we have said, or your predecessors have said at this committee in the past, is that actually we have opened the door to membership on this governance level. You have opened the door to governance membership of iwi when the iwi are ready and they want to have a position. I suppose the challenge will be from a cultural perspective, and you'll know this far better than I, is if that is not legislatively underpinned. There were some queries from iwi in the past around, is that true partnership or is that an invitation to the table? So I think there's still some water to go under the bridge in relation to that conversation in the new legislation, but that's where we currently stand. We have a standing resolution that says we will have the door open to iwi or Maori representation at all levels of the executive and governance for civil defence emergency management in the region.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Edie. Mayor Axel.
Yeah, just arising out of that question for me, and it's ignorance on my part, but you referred there to submitting against new legislation and so on. So where are we at in terms of our submissions? I mean, are we still to submit? Have we currently submitted and we're yet to argue? And you know, where are we at in that that process? Just conscious of that as a new member of the governance team, but without awareness of that process.
Yeah, very timely question, Mayor Axel. So we have previously had a standing committee, a submission committee, a smaller group with delegation from here, because the pace of change in relation to the central government reforms normally means that the submissions fall outside of the meeting schedule. So to be adaptable and flexible to that, we have had a standing committee. There is an agenda item later on that requests that you consider as a group re-establishing that committee. I think one of the first things that we probably need to submit against is the emergency management bill. It only came through end of last week or the week before, so we've only had it for about a week, and we are busy running through it as a group office to understand if it aligns with the papers that were proactively released by DPMC, suggesting where cabinet was going with emergency management. So those things have already been socialised, where it deviates from what we actually thought, and there are a couple of little fishhooks that I would, when we get to the agenda item, I'll be strongly recommending that we do want to submit and put some thought leadership through to the select committee.
Thank you, Mayor Axel. Councillor Steve.
Thanks. I think question for Julian. I noted in the group plan, as far as that representation with the exec group goes, there's 2 iwi groups to date. Is there a view for more, primarily down the southern end of the region where we are, Ngāti Tūwharetoa?
Yeah, so this has been a piece of work that has been a long time in the making, and I'm really pleased to say that in recent months, with the appointment of a new member of staff, Cale Pompey, we have made some significant strides. So the 2 iwi that are ready to join the executive group early next year currently are Waikato Tainui and Raukawa, and Maniapoto are also, I think it's gone to a 3rd now. Ngāti Tūwharetoa have also shown a desire to be involved, but I think that's later in the year. I think they will be the 4th iwi to join, but that might be kind of mid 2026. But they're the 4 iwi at the moment who have signalled an intention to have a seat at the table.
Yeah, thanks. Wheels are in motion for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Steve. Are there any further questions? Oh, sorry. Mayor Tanner. Oh, you're happy to move. So, Mayor Tanner moves that the report of the Joint Committee Overview, Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee, 15th of December 2025 be received. Can I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Grant. All those in favour say aye. Against? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Vicky. Okay, 7.2, we've got Vicky back again to present on the Joint Committee approved documents, purposes and review schedule. Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll take the report as read, and this is just a for information report. It's just to give the Joint Committee an overview of the currently approved documents and just with a summary of the purpose of each of those documents, along with the review schedule, with reviews providing the opportunity to ensure we have legislative compliance and that our settings reflect emergent risk and national guidance. The attachment to the report enables the Joint Committee to have an insight of documents that are a governance responsibility and provide a bit of insight and preparation for upcoming reviews. And the staff recommendation is that be received.
Thank you, Vicky. I'll open the floor to any questions. There being none, Mayor Axel would like to move that the report of the Joint Committee approved documents, purpose and review schedule, Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Joint Committee, 15th of December 2025 be received. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McGurven. Thank you, Vicky. I did have a question on how it was reflected on under the CDEM Act 2002 and the changes for the Emergency Management Bill Act, but I think Julian has covered that in the previous item.
I think the only point I would, without skipping straight over that one, is just to point out that the two things. Those documents, whatever you agree to here, so going back to the conversation that Deputy Mayor Grant came up with earlier, they are binding on your organisations. Once it's resolved here, the documents, the policies that are then overseen by you are binding on your organisations, and the expectation is, of course, under the CDEM Act, that you are the conduit to hold your chief executives and to account to make sure that these things are being implemented within your individual organisations. And then the second part is later on in this agenda, one of those documents is up for review, which is the controller's policy. So there are some changes, it's been reviewed and there's some changes being recommended for you later on.
Thank you, Julian. We're changing the order slightly. We're moving ahead to item 7.6 on your agenda, this Waikato CDEM group submission working group re-establishment. Getting signal.
Sorry, is the government reforms update first?
Oh, okay. What 7.5 is it? 43. Apologies, just finding the right page. Okay, we're moving to item 7.3, government reforms update, which Vicky is also going to present to us. Vicky.
Thank you again. Apologies, this is quite a lengthy one, but just regarding the recent conversations, going through each of the reforms that have the most impact on civil defence. So I'll take the report that as read, and so the report highlights the impacts for CDEM of each of the reforms, and I do note the report was up to date at the time of writing, but a lot apparently can happen in a week in legislative change. So I'll reflect the report and I'll add a few comments in with regard to recently advised things. So the Emergency Management Bill was always advised that the government aims to embed a whole of society approach, clarify local accountability, control and strengthen capability. Since this report was written or completed, the new Emergency Management Bill has been introduced, which obviously we've highlighted the submitting to that. Okay, and we do have Sean O'Halloran, the National Emergency Management Agency Senior Representative online, and he'll be speaking to his NEMA report later in the agenda. So I'd defer to him for any questions specifically about the bill. And of interest, at this point, we don't have consultation dates advised of when submissions are open or closed, because that'll come through from Select Committee. In the attachment to the report, there was an overview of the Cabinet agreed 21 proposals, and just by traffic light system, it was highlighted whether there was alignment, partial alignment or not, to the submission the group made on strengthening emergency management. And also out of that Cabinet paper, I just want to highlight another point of interest. This is always key at local authorities, is the full Cabinet paper signalled potential implementation costs of 82 million across 4 years, with costs to be borne by local authorities and CDEM groups. So just wanted to highlight that aspect. Then moving on to the Local Government Systems Amendment Bill. From a civil defence perspective, the inclusion of civil defence emergency management as a core local service of local authorities is welcome, as it provides clarity and reinforces council's statutory responsibilities and integrated delivery. So it just makes things very nice and clear. And then there's the link into the Public Service Amendment Act, where there's now going to, or it's proposed, mandatory business continuity planning provisions, moving out of the CDEM Act to the Public Service Act, which aligns with points we made in our submission on emergency management reform, highlighting that government social infrastructure agencies need to have requirements for continuity planning alongside critical infrastructure agencies. So, and that has been taken on board. So sometimes that influence does lead through to national changes. Now, with regard to resource management amendments, obviously the same time as the Emergency Management Bill, we've had the Planning Bill and the Natural Environment Bill were introduced. I don't have any comment on the detail of them because I haven't looked through them, but I do know that they offer support to risk reduction through the proposed regional spatial plan. The spatial plan will be a vehicle for identifying areas to avoid development or go carefully, but they will also point to areas of existing or legacy risk where adaptation plans will be mandated. And that links into the climate change response framework, which established 4 pillars of information sharing, roles and responsibilities, investment and risk reduction, pre and post event cost sharing. So that again also links to the regional spatial plan that's proposed. And then with regard to the fast track approvals amendment bill, this has been an ongoing concern of civil defence, where there's the potential again for civil defence exclusion from input into hazard management decisions when civil defence have consequence management role during an emergency event. So it's that situation of trying not to be the ambulance at the bottom of the hill, having a voice earlier on. And just to highlight, outside of the 5 key priority reform areas with potential impact to civil defence emergency management is the simplifying local government. And I note that submissions for that close on the 20th of February, and also the rates capping, which links a little bit to that comment earlier about the costs. So this now advised 4% is advised as the cap for all targeted rates. Since writing the report, we're aware that there is a targeted consultation underway by DIA with local authorities. And I just wanted to highlight from a civil defence group perspective, this has the potential to lock in disparities between civil defence groups. So those with historically higher targeted rates per rating unit retaining greater capacity, while groups like ours, currently at a significantly lower targeted rate, will be trapped at this level, which undermines the ability to lift capability and deliver on the coming national mandated requirements. So there's that link in there. But basically key to all these reforms is CDEM having a say on things that impact emergency management through a coordinated submission to ensure Waikato emergency management priorities and perspectives are reflected. And hopefully the next item is about the proposal to consider re-establishing the submission subgroup. And sorry for all that talk there. Basically, the staff recommendation is this be received.
Thank you, Vicky. I'll open up the floor for questions. Councillor Andrew?
Yeah, my questions for the NEMA official online is, if we are going to have 4% rates capping, how does central government envisage that we do provide an effective service, when I would have thought the easy conduit would be the money comes via NEMA into the regional CDEM committees, and it's monitored that way.
Yeah, kia ora. Through the chair, I just want to acknowledge the number of reform initiatives underway, but just want to note that it would be inappropriate for me to comment on any wider government reform.
Thank you. Does that conclude your questioning, Councillor Andrew? Does that conclude your questioning, Councillor Andrew? Sorry, just press that.
Yes, it does, Madam Chair. I've still got questions in my mind about how, how we're going to fund the CDM, local territories are going to fund this with a cap. So it's going to be a matter of choices to be made, I guess.
Absolutely. I think that's at the forefront of all our minds at the moment. Thank you. And Mayor Axel.
Yeah, so supplementary to that with a further question that you can't answer. Would I be right in saying then your understanding would be that any cost, the $82 million referred to as either built into general rates or would express as a targeted rate, either of which would be inside the rates capping legislation that's currently contemplated? Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'd have to circle back and just highlight again that it would be inappropriate for me to comment on a reform that's going underway led by the Department of Internal Affairs.
So with that in mind, are you able to refer this question to a colleague in a different department that could provide this group of governors with information that would appear to be fairly significantly required in order for us to respond to the legislation that you do act under?
Regarding the rates, that will be something that will need to be submitted through the Department of Internal Affairs.
So you're not able to assist in referring that matter through?
No, I am not.
Thank you. I'm sure it's useful to have that recorded.
Thank you, Mayor Axel. Any further questions? I just had one question. Vicky, if you could please advise members how we will be advised of submission timelines that fall ahead of our next meeting, including members who will be part of the committee and those outside as well, just for information.
Thank you. So following this meeting, I can provide an update on those ones that we have the dates on, which the rates capping is the 4th of February, but civil defence are not involved in that. So that's where we'd look at leaning into those around this table, because you've been invited directly by DIA to comment on that, but we could provide some commentary for a consistent approach, or there is the potential the group could lean in under democracy where everyone's got a right to speak. So there's two options there. Simplifying local government is the 20th of February, and the RMA and the Emergency Management Bill, like the dates are yet to be confirmed. But as soon as I know, I will email out those advisements. I'd do it to the full joint committee, not just the submission working group if there is one.
Thank you. And the working group recommendations and submissions draft goes through to the full committee as well.
Yes, so the delegation's only ever been used where the submission needs to be lodged within a certain amount of time. We've always tried to circulate the draft content before it's lodged, so everyone's aware of it. There's just not the timeframe sometimes for input from everyone, and those that fall within joint committee meetings, obviously we don't normally tend to use the delegated authority. It comes to the committee for a decision, particularly ones that involve all, like the Emergency Management Bill, something that large. Last time it was the full committee that put forward on that submission.
Thank you. And if you haven't already, I encourage everyone to go through the EM bill submission. It's under Annex 1 to understand some of the nuances of the previous committee where we fully impartially and didn't align with the proposed changes. So I'd like to move that, oh, sorry. Yeah, Axel.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if one of the two CEs in the room could clarify for me for the rates capping proposal that's out currently, is there actually an opportunity to submit? I thought there was a kind of a, not prohibition, but a sort of a target consultation with, if you're a member of LGNZ, a council couldn't submit direct, or is this, does this sit outside of that in that very specific emergency? But I might have the wrong understanding. I'm asking for clarity.
If I might come in, my understanding, which again, I'm happy to be corrected, is that there is no opportunity for councils to submit to the rate capping legislation, which will come into effect almost immediately.
But is there an opportunity to submit on this aspect? Is that what you're saying in regards to the emergency bit?
With regard to the rates capping, so we can put a comment in with regard to emergency management. So I say it's been advised or been copied into, there's a targeted consultation specifically with local authorities. But there is also the opportunity, like I say, under the democracy, you can do because you know this is happening, do a submission direct on that, even though we're not invited to the targeted consultation. So there's two avenues.
Well, so I'm just struggling to put those two bits together. Sorry if I'm being a bit dense. I don't think we can submit generally.
That's what I'm hearing from Susan. So
but we can submit specifically
as a group.
As a group.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps if staff can look into that further and report back to the group by email on clarifying whether that's possible. Thank you, Vicky. So I'd like to move that the report of the Government Reforms Update Civil Defence, Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee, 15th of December 2025 be received. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Maguire. All those in favour say aye. Against? Motion carried unanimously. No, we're going to the measurement. Apologies, we're just moving around a bit. We're opening it up for item 7.5, Waikato CDEM Group Submission Working Group Re-establishment, which Vicky is also going to present. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you, and apologies, I asked for this to be taken out of order because it follows on from the last report. So this is a decision report. I'll take it as read. It links to the Reform Update report and is proposing to re-establish a structure to enable an agile mechanism to lodge time-critical CDM group representative submissions in the instances where timelines don't align with joint committee meetings. Any reforms that have a longer submission time period, as NEMA have indicated, may be the case for the Emergency Management Bill. In those instances, submissions would come to the full joint committee for approval and not use delegation of the submission subgroup. The proposal is based on the previous membership being the chair of the joint committee, the deputy chair, plus 3 members with a representation of coastal, large urban and large rural environments, with the chair having been empowered to co-op as needed, with delegated authority to approve submissions on behalf of the group. And the governance group members are supported by, there's a chief executive group membership that do provide the executive support to that submission subgroup. So I will leave that there. I do have a definition of what, by Stats NZ, what councils fall into what areas, which I suppose I should. Coastal being Thames, Coromandel, Hauraki, Waikato District. Large urban being Hamilton City. Large rural being Maramarapiako, Waipa, Otrahonga, South Waikato, Waitomo and Taupo, with regional council having alignment with either coastal or large rural. Thank you.
Just before we take any expressions of interest in those roles, is there any questions for Vicky? Nope. I just had one. With the shift indicated in the of iwi representation across the EM bill in particular, I know that there is the power for the chair to appoint additional members to the group on an as-needed basis. But I'm just looking at the possibility of extending our required under a D for another council member with iwi relationships. I'm mindful of the group size, but think having this perspective is important in future submissions. Would that be possible? Is there?
So, of course, the previous delegation through the chair, I'll answer your question, I should say. The previous delegation, the chair could co-opt. What I would remind the committee, one of the bits of corporate memory going back, there is a standing delegation that this committee accepted an offer by Waikato Regional Council to have their two iwi ward councillors, they're not ward, but area councillors for the north and for the south, to be standing advisors in terms of iwi matters. Clearly they can't, interestingly, they're both chairs of iwis themselves, but they wouldn't be they wouldn't be in offering that advice in terms of as their in their iwi chair roles. They would be offering the advice as councillors with a mandate for large parts of the whole region as a whole, but large parts. So that's a standing offer that's still there.
Okay.
So obviously there's always the option to fall back to that and ask those members if they would sit on the submission committee, or you could just co-opt someone.
Okay. That sounds like there's already sufficient provisions in place to provide that voice. So open up for expression of interest. I'll open up the floor for expressions of interest for the full position. Councillor Maguire.
I'd be keen to be on that submission committee myself.
Okay, yeah, maybe that's a better way to do it. Apologies. I will start with the first requirement and then we'll move down. So we need to, it needs to be the chair or the deputy chair. Deputy Grant, are you happy to be on that?
Yes, I'm happy to continue work on this.
Okay, I'm happy to move that. Can we have a seconder? Councillor Thomas. Are there any other nominations? I think large urban population. Did you say Vicky Hamilton's the only one? So that I will be.
That's just by Stats NZ definition. There are obviously in comparison to some of the smaller entities.
Okay. Okay. So I will move. Oh, I've already moved. No, we'll just yeah, he's got the, no, that's just saying either the chair or the deputy of this group to be appointed. Not that we have a chair and the deputy. Yeah. Sorry. Can I have expressions of interest for a member that represents council with a coastal environment? Ash?
No, I'm not really on a coastal environment. Only in the weekends, of course. But
Piako, yeah.
no, no, probably recommend Andrew for the rural one in a minute, but yeah.
Okay. Vicky, can you remind us which councils would fall under the coastal environment?
I think I was a representative of the coastal environment on the last one.
Okay.
The absence of someone, I would be happy to continue that focus, but I'd be equally happy if someone else, one of the coastal areas, put their hand up too.
That leaves Haraki and Waikato District, besides Thames Coromandel.
Councillor Tennille?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm only new and I'm an appointee. Is it possible for me to be in that submission group on coastal as well as rural?
By definition, is that possible?
Tūrahanga.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
In that case, since you're already appointed as the deputy. Yep. So I'd like to move that Councillor Tennille represent the council with coastal environment. Can I have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Councillor Grant. I'll open up expressions of interest for a member that represents council with a large urban population. I can nominate myself. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Lee. And then we'll just open it up for expressions of interest with one member that represents council with a large rural environment.
Yep. Andrew McGibbon.
And happy to.
Sorry, we've got Mayor Axel.
And happy to nominate Gary Maguire.
Councillor Maguire. I'm happy to second. Any other expressions of interest?
Yeah, I've been asked to nominate Marcus Gower.
Marcus Gower?
From Waipark Council.
Councillor Tennille, did you have a question or you?
Sorry, I was writing notes. Apologies.
Your light was on.
Oh, no.
Perhaps you hadn't turned it off. No worries. Can we have a seconder for Councillor Gower? For the large rural environment as part of Waipa. I don't know if I could second that. I can second that to put it on the table. The mover was Councillor Bennett. So we've got two nominations for that. Are we happy to do a majority vote for that?
Sorry, I wasn't too sure if I reflected clearly. As the chair, you can increase the numbers or decrease them as you see fit. Okay. That was just the base structure that was agreed. So we had representation of the environments across the Waikato. Okay. It's not, yeah, it doesn't have to be that exact number. That's the chair's decision.
Okay, then I'm happy for both nominations to be positions to be put forward for Marcus and for Merrick. So, yep, there's an agreement on that. That will take points 3 and 4 together.
Chair. Just check that's correct because I heard Councillor Maguire.
That's Maguire. Okay. And others are able to join as observers. Is that correct as well?
That's at the discretion of the chair. Okay. Yes.
I'd be happy for people to join if they want to observe and participate. Okay, so I'll move that the joint.
So I'm just getting my reading right. So Marcus and myself are not the members, right? I was the nominator of Maguire. Is that right?
Oh, sorry, I see what you mean. Axel was nominating Gary Maguire.
Yeah, that's it.
Gary Maguire. So it's Councillor Marcus from Waipa, and the second is Councillor Maguire. Yeah. So I think the spelling on Maguire, but yeah. I-R-E.
I'll do this one.
So I'd like to move points 3 and 4 that the Joint Committee Chair appoint these additional Joint Committee members to the submission working group as needed basis, and that the Joint Committee delegate authority to the submission working group to approve submissions made on behalf of Waikato CDEM be approved, sorry. Can I get a seconder? Deputy Mayor Grant. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unanimously. Oh, can't believe that one. Okay, we're just moving to 7.4 on your agendas. Okay, item 7.4, the group work program 2024 to 2026, quarter 1, 1st of July, 30th September 2025. Vicky, sorry, Julian to present.
I'm going to give Vicky's voice a break for a moment because I think it just links in, Chair, to a question earlier on. So I'll just hijack this one from Vicky. Ask her not to go too far away. So the purpose of this report is to provide the Waikato CDEM Emergency Management Group Joint Committee with a high-level assurance reporting on the status of the end of quarter 1, 1st July to 30th of September 25, the work program for 24-26. So I'll take the report as read. I will highlight, however, that this is the final report against a previous group plan. So our previous group plan is now that this work program sat under has now ceased. Any future reporting will be on a different set of measures. So this was, and that will be from the 1st of October. So this is 1st of July 25 to the 30th of September 25. And from a governance point of view, there were no actions identified that required governance intervention. And the bit I'm going to ask you to have a look at is this is the level of reporting, and you are a new group, and you will have different, potentially have different requirements. If you look from at the bottom of page 50, you can see it outlines the number of actions that were carried out, were on track, off track, or potentially had some delivery issues. And then further down, starting on page 51, that is the level of reporting we have been providing to this committee. So going back to the question I had earlier, or I was posed earlier by Deputy Mayor Grant in terms of what is your role, does that level, and it's a question for everyone, does that level of detail in terms of what the action was and what the work being undertaken was, does that level of reporting allow you to give the oversight that you wish, the level of oversight that you wish, or are you looking for something more granular without getting into the operational space, so to speak?
Does anyone have any feedback on that? Deputy Mayor Grant?
I feel the need to respond, and it was my question, but I'll ask it I'll pose it back in the form of a question. If you look at the findings and the review that took place regarding Auckland's response to the storms and floods, how would you see the lessons that have been taken from that in regard to the application of the information that we are getting in regard to the readiness and the status of the work in this area in relation to the findings that were held through that review?
So Auckland's obviously very different. It's a unitary authority. And I think it was, we're a devolved model. I think what I would say is at the KEG level, the coordinating executive group level, where your chief executives or their delegates sit, there is a more granular level of reporting that actually goes down to individual council level. And it will say at individual council level in terms of which councils are reporting off track, but with mitigation in place, which are on track. So your executives are getting the granular level at those, and they are executive level meetings, and the decision is made there as to whether anything needs escalating up in terms of support from the collective. That doesn't stop, however, that at that KEG level, that executive level, a chief executive having it highlighted that their council has, for example, been off track for a number of actions across a number of months, and they take that back to their individual, pick on the Mayor Ash, because he sat directly opposite me, but that's Ali Van Kuyk coming back to you and saying, I need some support as the Mayor, as a governance level, to push this, because there's an all of council issue and we're not progressing it. That's made up, by the way. There's no issues I'm referring to, Madam Matapiako. So there is that more granular level. This is as a collective, is what you have here. I think, going back to your specific question, my interpretation of some of the focus on the Auckland was probably the absence of engagement with the plan. The plan didn't focus or didn't become a focus of their meetings. So by having it on the table and focusing on outcomes and challenges and interventions, we are doing what's expected of us. But it's just at what level gives you comfort. They were unitary authority. We're not. We're a devolved delivery model where we look at it from a collective, but we don't report up to you at this level on individual councils.
Through the chair, and I'm just asking this as a newbie to this committee, I think the level of reporting is sufficient, but if we did have a particular interest in one area, where do we go to get that granular information? Can we email you, or do we just ask those questions at a meeting like this to get that further information on one particular point?
So that would be through your KEG member. So in your case, it would be your chief executive, David Spears. So he is the executive for you. He should have that detail. But if we have no issues with you contacting the staff in the regional office directly, if there is something. Yeah.
Councillor Andrew.
Yeah, my question is probably supplementary to Councillor Spicer's. This is a good basic sort of governance overview. My question would be, how do we drill down into it a little bit more if you need to? And maybe additionally, you could put maybe some KPIs in there which are being met or not being met. For example, on work program number 5, training program for volunteers is in line with capability development, etc., etc. What's the KPI on number of volunteers? What's the KPI on level of training, etc., etc.? So this, just to say it blue, green, or red is from me as a governance level. I'd like to just have maybe a touch more detail, just so give us confidence.
And hopefully in the new reporting, so in the action plan that is attached to the new action plan that's attached to the delivery of this, there are some more specific, some more smart measures. They're not perfect in years 1 and 2. We know that because we're trying to get to the position that the smarter, more specific measures come in years 3, 4, and 5 because they align with the LTP. At the moment, we're years 1 and 2 of the action plan for this are operating in an old long-term plan that would require, if we wanted to, we would require some submissions into annual plans if we wanted to get into changes of levels of service. So, but this, again, going back, this is last year's or last group plans reporting. You will get that more granular detail, a smarter detail in the new action plan.
So is the group comfortable with that level of reporting, noting those?
And I would, as I said, I'll just go back to, I would encourage part of the preparation for this meeting would be for members, would be to sit down with your chief executives or your KEG members, their delegate, around what was the level of reporting looking like for your councils in relation to the action plan. So when you come here, if somebody does ask the question, you've got some visibility over where your individual council is performing against the collective plan.
I guess I would just highlight that for any items that are off track or having delivery issues, that under issues, that further detail would be provided, that more granular response. Further questions? I just had one on under Action 8 on the training available through the National Capability Development Working Group. Can you advise what the recovery managers training has been added, and does it reflect some of the learnings from the flood response reviews in terms of pre-planning recovery? Is there anyone that could answer that detail?
It's the next point on the agenda, then we'll talk about pre-plan for recovery.
Okay, thank you. That being the case, can I have a mover that the report for the group work program 2024 to 2026 quarter 1, 1st of July to 30th September 2025, Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee 15th December 2025 be received? Oh, we'll go with Councillor Spicer. And a seconder? Councillor Lee. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unanimously. I'd like to call Irving up for the next item on group strategic planning recovery, which is item 7.6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just give an overview of the report. Strategic plan for recovery is required under the CDEM Act 2002 to make sure communities can recover well after disaster, strengthen resilience, and reduce future risk. The CDEM Amendment Act of 2016 made it clear that recovery planning must be included in group plans, and Section 17 and 49 required planning across all the 4 Rs. The 4 Rs being reduction, readiness, response, and recovery. This approach helps identify the likely impact of hazards and risks on communities and guides what needs to be done to prepare effectively for recovery. It builds disaster resilience through risk management, strong infrastructure, developing capacity and capability. This results in effective recovery and stronger communities. If adopted by the Joint Committee, this document will be referenced in Waikato CDEM Group Plan 2025-2030 and will carry the same legislative status as that plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open the floor for questions.
Could I ask Irving, through the chair, could I just ask Irving to update the members as to what engagement their individual councils may have had in the development of this document?
Thank you, Julian. So I've been working with all the councils since June last year, and the intention is to have all the plans finished by June next year. The council are engaging very well with it and actually and getting the benefit of these plans of understanding that what they need to do to actually enhance the resilience of their communities and infrastructure as well. So great progress in that space as well.
Thank you, Irving. Are there any other questions on this item? There being none, can I have a mover that the report for the Group Strategic Planning for Recovery Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee 15th of December 2025 be received, and that the Waikato CDEM Group Joint Committee approve and adopt Attachment 1 Waikato CDEM Group Strategic Planning for Recovery Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee Agenda 15th of December 2025 as the guiding framework for the group's recovery planning and implementation. Moved by Councillor Andrew. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Edie, Deputy Mayor Edie. Deputy Mayor Edie. All those in favour say aye. Against? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Irving. Irving, do you next one too? Oh, Julian. Open the floor for the 7.7 controller and recovery manager policies.
Thank you, Chair. So earlier on, Vicky identified and gave you a table of a number of the policies that are underwritten, if you want, or resolved by this committee, and when they're up for review and what the purpose of them were. This is one of those. I signalled earlier in the meeting that this one's up for review. So this has gone, the purpose of this report is to, as a result of that review, to request an adoption by yourselves, some changes to both the CDEM controllers and the recovery manager policies. This has been through the coordinating executive group, KEG, who support this proposal. So when this document was reviewed, the discussion at the coordinating executive group included some of the challenges that our local controllers and recovery managers are experiencing in meeting the ongoing experiential training settings. There's a specific setting in the policy that requires the controller or a local recovery manager to lead as a controller or recovery manager a real emergency or recovery, or in the absence of a real emergency or recovery, lead an exercise annually. The challenge with that is our controller pool grows, our recovery manager pool grows. We are fortunate that we don't have a lot of emergencies that the controllers, in terms of real emergencies, that they can therefore lead. So we rely heavily on the exercises. And there are probably, what we've realized is there are too many recovery managers and controllers and not enough exercises. So what's happening is some of our controllers are missing and recovery managers are missing the opportunity to meet that experiential policy setting. So having reviewed it, having reviewed the experience, at point 9, there is some wording that is being suggested to replace the annual expectation, and that is that those newly appointed controllers or recovery managers must act in their statutory role in at least one exercise or real emergency in the first 2 years. The purpose being they're newly appointed in role, the training is new, and they get the priority over the exercises over the first 2 years to embed that learning. Ongoing requirement after that is it changes. All recovery managers and controllers must do at least one lead exercise or one lead real emergency every 2 years. So it just creates some space for the exercise to be shared around. There is already a definition of what an exercise. It's not the desktop. There is another document which is around training and exercising that outlines what an exercise is, and therefore what is required in terms of those controllers. So they're the main changes. I do need to flag that in the, and this is an apology on my behalf, in the attachments, the controller and recovery manager attachments, the red writing that is in there is not the, is unfortunately, he said earlier iteration of the changes. It's an earlier document. So we have put hard copies on the table of the correct changes, but the changes are as 0.9 of the report here. They are the correct changes, and we will make sure if you approve them that the e-copies are sent out to you with the minutes. So these changes aim to prioritise development opportunities for new role holders, whilst ensuring that all statutory role holders still maintain competency through regular practice as a minimum, and it is only a minimum, every 2 years. They don't prevent anybody from, where opportunities exist, they don't prevent those statutory role holders from participating in more frequent exercises or SIMS-based emergencies.
Thank you, Julian. I think it's a really sensible suggestion and ensures the capability of our recovery managers and controllers. Are there any? I'll open the floor for questions. There have been none. Can I have a mover that the report of the Controller and Recovery Manager Policies, Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee, 15th December 2025 be received, and that the Waikato CDEM Group Joint Committee adopt the proposed changes to the Controller and Recovery Manager Policies, Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee Agenda 15th December 2025 at pages 92 and 102 respectively, relating to exercise requirements and experience criteria. Can I have a mover, please? Mayor Ash, and seconded by Councillor Lee. All those in favour say aye. Against? Motion carried unanimously. We'll move to item 7.8 on page 111. Yep. Julian, you can present the item.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. So, so one of the key roles of the Joint Committee as a collective is to set budgets, but also for the collective, and once you've set that budget, the Regional Council kindly collect that rate on behalf of all councils. That's a gold-plated arrangement, and long may it continue. But once that rate is collected on behalf of you all by the Regional Council, then one of your key roles is to oversee that budget. So the opportunity here is, at every meeting we provide you with a report in relation to our financial performance. This one is in respect to Q1 of 25-26. So I think the headline message here, I'll take the report as read. I'll go through some specific issues, but the headline here is there are some work going on in the background and some challenges in terms of how the budget was originally set. That means that these figures are probably not an accurate reflection. They're what we've been provided by the administrating authority, by our management accountants, but they are subject to some change because of some challenges that I'll talk through now. So you will see that the group recorded a net loss in terms of for Q1 due to lower actual revenue compared to budgeted revenue. Now, under the last triennium, the Group Emergency Management Office through the Regional Council, we used to provide service level agreement for 4 councils, and that included the employment of 5 staff. And what happened, they all ceased at the end of last year, and they went back to those individual councils for delivery at the local level. The timing of that change meant that the annual plan for the Regional Council had already been set, or for CDEM. And what happened is the budget was given to us for those 5 staff that no longer worked for us. and were sent back, if you want, to the local authority. So hence why the original budget was incorrect. And that has roll-on effects, because the Labour budget that was given to us at the original budget setting, which was obviously inaccurate, that comes with some overheads and management costs attached to it. So there is an ongoing review between Civil Defence or our office and the Regional Council in relation to these finance, particularly the allocated costs. The labour costs have now been removed, not reported, but the allocated costs we're working through, which is in a really positive way. But this will affect future budget reporting to the Joint Committee. It also, timing-wise, the Regional Council have identified that in the annual planning process currently for 26-27, there is a potential for an increase to keep the Civil Defence Group the level of service that we've currently got. Now, we're waiting for the final figures on that. I don't have them for you today. I'm hoping that those figures will be forthcoming very shortly. But dependent on what I am comfortable is with the conversations I've been having with the Regional Council, that the costs, any costs now in the 26-27 year, whatever the quantum is, will be for standing still. It won't be for any increased level of service. It will be for the continuance of the level of service at the regional level that we currently have. But depending on how much that cost to stand still, that increase is, it may require us to come back to you as a joint committee and ask for your permission for the Regional Council to rate for that. You are the group that decides what the cost of the Regional Civil Defence budget is. The Regional Council can quite rightly, as the administrating authority, the cost of administrating us and standing still, they can make, they need to collect that money, but depending on the quantum, we might have to come back to you and ask your permission to increase the targeted rate in the 26-27 annual plan. And if we do come back to you, because of where we are in the annual plan cycle, it is likely to be likely to be before the next joint committee meeting, and we would have to ask for an additional meeting between now and then. So that's my report, Chair.
Thank you, Julian. I'll open up the floor for questions. Mayor Axel?
Yeah, thanks, Julian, and forgive me again, I'm a newbie at this forum. It has the way in which the reporting and the management's accounting support to you changed, because it seems to me that the effect you talked about of staff returning to their kind of home councils, etc., is not a new thing. It would happen every year or every triennium. I'm just surprised it wasn't anticipated in the budgeting process.
Yes, I think there is some mitigation. There is, so it wouldn't happen every year. There is some mitigation in terms of, and you will understand how the different councils do their annual plan. So we're doing the annual planning at the moment. The Regional Council is doing its annual planning now and setting budgets now for 26-27. So when we go back to the decision for the Regional Council to cease delivering the local service level agreements, that decision was made in December 2024. So it's about this time 12 months ago. So there was notice, but it ran in tandem with the annual plan processing. So there was some blurring. And again, in the further mitigation for that, whilst it was clear, probably 2 councils out of the 4, it was very unlikely that they would carry on. There were 2 councils where there was quite a bit of negotiation still going on. So it wasn't clear that 2 of those councils would definitely cease. It was clear that 2 would around this time last year, but there were 2 that were up in the air. So it was the Regional Council finance team do have some mitigation in this situation, and it's a one-off. It's not something that will happen every year. All these service level agreements now have ceased, and all with the group office, and all services are now at a local level or at a shared service level between local authorities. So this shouldn't be a recurrence.
No, that's useful, and you'll be aware of the pressure of affordability across all of our rates with our communities, and yeah, let's save surprises for under the Christmas tree rather than, you know, additional rate take required.
Thank you, Mayor Axel. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, just one. Sorry, Madam Chair. I suppose just I'm a newbie like a lot of others. So what are our total streams of revenue? What other streams of revenue do we have?
So the main stream of revenue is the Uniform General Annual Charge. So the legislation, what the legislation says is, and hopefully this will cement what I said about the gold-plated funding model. What the legislation says is that the cost of administrating this group, so the regional budget, if it's not agreed in another way, it should be split equally, one share equally amongst each member. And that would see the likes of Hamilton City and the population size of Hamilton City paying the same share of the regional budget as Otaronga or Waitomo. And you can see that there's probably some argument around some unfairness there. I'm sure the people of Hamilton City would argue differently, but so what we've agreed here, and it's been a long-standing item, is that you as a group set the budget, and the regional council agree to collect that rate against every property in the region. So that's the main, and what that also does, it stops everyone having to invoice each other and all the inefficiencies of multiple handling of invoices. So the community get a better deal in terms of economic efficiencies. That's the mainstream. We do get, but it's not guaranteed, we do get extra money in from a training fund. So for the training that we provide to people that aren't full-time emergency managers, we are able to draw some money and recover some cost for the training that we provide, but that's year on year. That's not a guaranteed revenue stream, but it's one that exists at the moment. And that's in the region of low hundreds of thousands, like 100,000, $120,000 mark. It's not a huge amount of money in terms of revenue. I think that's probably, we used to get a revenue stream from the service level agreements, but of course that's now ceased. But we are, as a group, you heard Vicky talk earlier on, that we might be disadvantaged by any decision, any final decision around rate capping, because as a group, we are the largest civil defence group by membership. We're the fourth largest in terms of geographic area and population. And when you look at a devolved model of delivery, there's only eight civil defence groups that do a devolved model like us. And out of those 8, we are the 5th lowest in terms of what our budget is. If you go across to somewhere like the Bay of Plenty, who has probably a bit more landmass, but half the population, they have a significantly higher regional civil defence budget than us. Even if you go down to Otago, again, significantly less population, but a sizably bigger budget than us. And that's just 2 examples. But we've always worked on that lean model. And that's what Vicky was referring to in terms of the rate cap potentially gives us an Achilles heel in that space.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Yeah, that answered a question I had about the comparison, how we were doing with other regions in terms of resourcing. I am a little bit concerned that you commented that we may not be resourced to stand still, and just mindful of some of the other comments earlier today around the government proposals and perhaps that requiring extra workload of us. Do we anticipate that extra resourcing that it will require, and will it be included in the review?
So in terms of the one of the comments I had written down, I think, but it was touched on elsewhere, was it's not just the if you look, if the legislation goes through as it currently stands, there are some unknowns. So, for example, there are the ability of the director. This is if the legislation goes through as is. There is the power of the Director General of Emergency Management to set regulation. It doesn't outline what those regulations are likely to be, but I could anticipate, if I was the Director General of Emergency Management, where some of the frustrations have been, and some of the issues and challenges have been in recurring reviews, and you're talking around, well, what does the level of training look like? What does a consistent ICT platform look like instead of umpteen different civil defence groups using different ones? What does a controller, what do the qualifications experience of a controller look like, for example? Now, if rules are made, if I was the Director General, I would probably be targeting those, saying, well, this is what I expect of my emergency management system to uplift. Though all of those come with a cost, whether it's a training cost, whether it is a licensing cost, whether it is a hardware cost, whether it is a time cost. And what we're not seeing in the bill, so we can assume there's some assumptions here, is that there will be any funding. It will be unfunded regulation that we are expected to pick up. I'm not sure if that's part of the 80-something million that Vicky has identified, because for me these are the regulations that are yet not surfaced, and we don't know what else is on that list. So I just think we have to wait and see what that looks like. But there are some, for me, having been around the block a couple of times now, those are the the ones I would say are coming our way. And I think it would be reasonable for us to expect if the Director General did mandate that we had an ICT system called X, or we had a training requirement of Y, that if there's no money that comes with that, there would be a significant phasing that allowed us to incorporate that over a period of time against long-term plans.
Thank you. No further questions? Okay. Can I have a mover that the report group financial performance 1st of July to 30th of September 2025, Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee 15th of December 2025 be received? Mayor Axel, can I have a seconder? Councillor Andrew. Oh, here's that. We'll go with Tennealle, Councillor Tennealle, if you're happy with that. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Motion carried unanimously. We'll move to item 7.9. Susan, to present the Coordinating Executive Group meeting summary.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I had the dreaded lurgy on the day and the meeting was chaired by Wayne, but Julian was at the meeting and can report on it.
Thank you, Julian.
And thank you, Chair. And Wayne Allen was going to be here on behalf of the Chair, but he's got the lurgy today. So.
We're all going to take a turn.
Yeah. So this is a report to yourselves. It's a standing item on this agenda that looks at what was discussed at the Coordinating Executive Group. You won't be surprised to see, I'll take it as read, but you won't be surprised to see that there are many of the items that are on here that are on the KEG agenda that have carried through into this. So so I'll just touch on the ones that probably that jump out and might need some explanation. So the standing items are the person or the PCBU, the person conducting a business or undertaking. The short explanation around this one is that we received advice as a civil defence group that the collective is neither is the KEG as an entity a PCBU, but the individual councils who make up the coordinating executive group and the individual members are the PCBUs. So we get a report through every quarter on where each of those members are at in terms of some of the issues that would be seen as health and safety, such as deployment policies for example, such as doing operational plans for foreseeable events where we can then look at putting some treatment or mitigation of the risks identified. So that is what that's a regular report that we get through. I've talked about the group work plan, and the government reforms is the same as you've had here. In a decision required, there was I touched on it earlier on, our new work program or trying to be a bit smarter and more measurable. Years 1 and 2 were discussed at that meeting. Again, it doesn't align with annual plan. Sorry, it doesn't align with long-term plans. So, but a work program with some specific outputs and outcomes was agreed at that at the KEG, and that will be put through to you. That will be reported on to you at the next meeting. We also talked about some regionally consistent long-term plan KPIs, so councils could, we can start looking at having some regionally consistent measures across all your councils in relation to civil defence emergency management. There's some work ongoing in that space, particularly with, we've been kindly offered some support from, as an office, from Matamata District Council to ensure that any measures that we come up with would stand the scrutiny of Audit New Zealand and are appropriate to the local authorities, and there's no fish hooks in there. The other one that's probably in here worthy of note is the Hikirangi Subduction Zone project and coordination plan. So this is an ongoing piece of a program where we as a group have commissioned some work through Earth Sciences New Zealand, as they're called now, but it was GNS, in relation to what does a absolute worst day scenario look like for the Waikato. So you've got hundreds of thousands of, or tens of thousands of kilometres, I should say, of fault line, and at one particular point with a maximum credible event at 9.1, that would be our worst day. What would that look like? So we could do some emergency management planning in terms of consequences, how many people would likely be displaced, where could we put them? So it enables all that thinking. So we've had that project, phase 2 of that project, agreed and sent out to each of the individual councils with some legal advice around how that interacts with other legislation, such as the new LIM legislation. And most of the other things have already been talked about: statutory roles, about the change to the controller policy. Oh, and sorry, there was the other one that has not been talked about here today is duty officer warning protocol. That's an opportunity for KEG to get a consistent approach to what we send out during warnings and how. So that's come out of the coroner's inquest. We don't have to wait for the formal review to understand that we could do better in having a consistent approach across all of our councils as to when we send out and what we send out. So that was approved at KEG. But most of the other items have been talked about here today for your own.
Thank you, Julian. I'll open the floor for questions. There being none, that was fulsome, and thank you. So I'll move that the report for the Coordinating Executive Group's Meeting Summary Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee 15th of December 2025 be received. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Eadie. All those in favour say aye. Against? Motion carried unanimously. Move on to 7.10, the NEMA update.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and kia ora. Happy to take the report as read. There's obviously been a significant develop in the emergency management bill since the report was submitted. So I've just got a couple of points to touch on that by way of verbal update. So Minister Mitchell introduced the new EM bill to Parliament with its first reading last week, and the bill will now be considered by the Select Committee. The committee will seek feedback by the way of public submissions. The dates for that have yet to be set. The government still expects the legislation to be passed in 2026. As the bill's currently going through Parliament. I'm unable to comment on any of the detail within. However, there is a reasonable amount published on the NEMA website and also in the explanatory note at the start of the bill that gives a good overview of what the bill sets out to achieve. And significantly on that point, it is incorporating the lessons learned from the 2023 North Island severe weather events and other numerous reviews over the years. We encourage people and organisations to have their say on the bill by making a submission to the Select Committee when that process opens up. Happy to take any further questions.
Any questions? There being none, can I have a mover that the report of the National Emergency Management Agency NEMA update Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee 15th December 2025 be received? Can I have a mover? Councillor Lee, can I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Grant. All those in favour say aye. Against? Motion carried unanimously. I am aware we're getting a little bit restless. We do have item 7.12 on the declarations of roles and support, which will be a half an hour presentation. I'm just sorry, I'm just checking, do we need a comfort stop for 10 minutes before we start that? We're getting some nods. We'll adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes and be back at 12:10.